The other thing that I want to touch on is there, particularly in the last week or two, as this Debaltseve crisis has developed, there's been a lot of commentary by Ukrainians in the diaspora as well as in Ukraine that somehow Poroshenko is to blame for this and that he's a traitor, he's a zradnik. People get very emotional. And I think, I don't want to be a Poroshenko apologist, but the man was dealt a very, very bad poker hand that he's playing as best as he can. He inherited a country that's financially bankrupt. There's no funds in the treasury. His whole military was completely rotten. He can't count on his generals, his general staff. The ordinary armed forces are useless, and he's in the throes of rebuilding it with nothing in his pockets to do that with. And the only reliable armed forces he's got is these volunteer battalions, and he's making the most of it. And of course, they're up against a very professional, very well-equipped, Russian-led, force in the Donbass that are winning a lot of battles. And there's no surprise there. But to blame Poroshenko on it, I think, is being too quick and it's being too emotional. He's doing the best that he can. He probably could do more, and I think in retrospect he's going to learn some lessons from Debaltseve and all the rest of it. The problem is that unfortunately this war is being conducted in the full glare of open communications. Like every soldier in the volunteer battalions out in the Donbass has a cell phone, and they're texting, they're messaging to the people back home. And for anybody that knows anything about military tactics, strategies, or warfare, or has experienced it, there's this thing called the fog of battle. You are a soldier in a particular trench or whatever. You have a very limited view of what's going on, and things may seem very desperate, and you may interpret what's happening in your immediate vicinity as being very dire and as a loss and whatever, because you don't see the big picture. So, the texts come out, Debaltseve, we're being sold out to the Russians, we've been abandoned, the general staff doesn't care, Poroshenko doesn't care, because they don't see the big picture. They don't see the overall strategy. And as Poroshenko said, he needed Debaltseve not for any strategic military reason, but as a bargaining chip in Minsk, because he wanted to show, and as we're all beginning to understand, Minsk 2 is the last real serious attempt at negotiating with Putin that there will ever be. Because he wanted to prove that regardless of what Putin says or does, you cannot believe him. And there was still this feeling amongst Merkel and some of the Europeans, well, maybe we can still negotiate. Maybe we can still negotiate. I think Minsk 2 proved that it's useless to negotiate. There's nothing meaningful that comes out of it. But he needed to hang on to Debaltseve because he knew damn well that if Debaltseve was still in Ukrainian hands, when the ceasefire went into effect, Putin's little henchmen there would not stop, that the fighting would continue, that the artillery would continue, and that there would be no respect for the ceasefire. And that's exactly what happened. So yes, Debaltseve may have been a military defeat, but it was a diplomatic and political victory in the sense that it sealed, put the final nails on the coffin of this whole idea that you can somehow negotiate with Putin and that he will somehow respect, the terms of any ceasefire or agreement that comes out of it. So let's, I guess, not get too excited about individual little battles or individual little defeats or victories. In themselves, they're not as meaningful as the overall strategy, the long-term waging of the kind of political, psychological, and military warfare that's happening in Ukraine. So that just hopefully, I think, puts a better perspective on things.